The next thing that you should consider when creating an artwork or picking references or creating references is your composition. Now, the composition of your artwork is how it sits on a page, how your artwork looks to the viewer. And some of the things that we look for are things like eye movement. We talked about that in our 9 squares. How do your eyes look around the page? Things that make an artwork more interesting are things going off the page. Not having an artwork that's too busy, putting your area of focus off center, and never ever have objects floating around your page. That is not an effective composition. So we're going to look at some samples of this so that we can determine what is a good composition and what is not. Firstly, it's a flower. You look at the flower, and that's kind of it. It's a nice flower. It really is. But your eyes have nowhere to go. You look at the flower and go, yep, that's a flower. And it makes it a little uninteresting. Now, if you take that same flower and firstly push it off slightly to the right, that off-center area of focus helps create a little bit of visual interest. And it's sitting on the edge of a table. So you look at the flower, but then your eyes travel to the left and to the right along that edge. That little bit of extra eye motion makes this more interesting. Extreme zooms can also help your interest and detail. So this is still a flower, still a daisy, and you're looking first at this detailed center. You can see the patterning that happens in that flower middle. But then your eyes start following petals, and they kind of jump off the edge of the page and then go back toward that center in that radiating pattern of the petals. And they always come back to the center, but they move. Having that extra motion of the viewer's eye makes an artwork more interesting. What about this one? Firstly, where is your focal point? There really isn't one. Now, while a field full of daisies might be really beautiful in real life, it's not too interesting of an artwork. One, you have no place for your eyes to look at first, because this is very busy. There's no definitive path that your eyes would follow, because everything is just kind of scattered around. So this, while pretty in real life, might not make a good artwork. The same thing is kind of true of this one. You're more close up. You have a grouping of daisies. It's a really pretty grouping, but there's no one place for your eyes to look at, and everything is kind of cluttered. Beautiful in real life, not so pretty of an artwork. Now, could you create a focal point? Sure. Take one of these flowers and change the colors. Put a big butterfly overlapping these things. Try some different things. See if it works. This, while being daisies still, is a much nicer composition. You are looking at this trio of flowers first. Your biggest one in the middle. Then you're kind of looking left to right. But then your eyes look at this lovely little unfocused daisy that's kind of peeking out right here. These little edges here. It's really beautiful and creates a more interesting composition. Composition can be found and created in photographs like we just saw, but you could also create your own compositions to make an artwork. In this case, several references were used and some things were actually invented to make this composition. Your eyes go to the balloon hedge dog first, but definitely also travel to the kids down here. Might peek at some of the details of the flowers and some of the background clouds, but the main focal attention is on that hedge dog. And this was created. It doesn't exist in real life. You have to think too, when picking these kinds of projects, something that looks good in color and you might really be excited about creating might not look good in black and white. So it might not make a good drawing, especially a good black and white drawing. So think about that before you settle on a reference. Now I'm going to show you some student examples, and they were actually done in Art 1 to show you some good and not so good compositions. The first is this crane. It's drawn lovely, the proportions are there, the shading is lovely, it's nice, but the background is just a single line that would be the ground that the crane is standing on. It looks like the crane is floating in midair. Oh, he's flying, Miss Pontiff. No, he's not flying. His wings are not out. Come on now. No polar bears and snowstorms either. Y'all are better than that. So, while this is a very good crane, it doesn't look finished because it doesn't have any kind of background element. Now, this artwork, I wonder if you can even tell what it is to start with. This artwork, overall, like that field of daisies, is just too busy. Now, if you can't tell what it is, it's actually a Chinese-style dragon. His head is right here. His body arches over the top. He's held by chains by this little guy right here. There's wall patterns and tapestries in the back. And because there's so much detail and so little value change, the whole thing is just way too busy. Two easy things that they could have done to improve this. One, get rid of the wall designs. Get rid of the hanging, get rid of the pattern, just completely get rid of everything that was on the wall. And then focus on the figure and the dragon to improve the shading, to get that range of values from number 10 to number 1. Now these turtles, again this is Art 1, are a gorgeous example of good composition and good shading with something that's not too busy. You are looking here first. This is a focal point. The point that they touch noses is where you're going to look at first. But then your eyes travel to the rest of the shell, the rest of the turtles, and even on this blanket here at the bottom. Now these turtles were originally in a grass field and they didn't want to do all the grass, so they decided to put them on a quilt. It would have been a little bit more successful if the perspective of the quilt was more accurate, with lines that actually went to vanishing points to look like it's horizontal instead of vertical, but it's still an overall good composition. This artwork just brings everything really close up. You're right in the flower itself, your focal point is the center, then your eyes follow these petals outward, and they even go off the page. This simple but beautifully done artwork is a good composition. This dragon, pretty good too. You definitely look at his face first. His tongue brings your eyes out to the left. You follow down the right to go off the page down here. Now, the shading is not especially fantastic, especially these belly scales here with that heavy outlining. But compositionally, it is effective. This kitty cat, very good example. You're looking at the face first. You're looking at his chunk next. You have some interesting negative space with these two triangular areas. Overall, very good. As you can see on the dragon and the cat, you don't have to fill in every single corner to make an effective drawing. But this artist decided to. You have options of what kind of artwork you'd like to pick. But it's still an effective composition. You're going to always look at a face first. That's a focal point. And you do have things to look at that draw your eyes around the page. But it's not so busy that you lose your focal point. So this is an overall good composition as well. Ooh. For this project, you can even do black and white with an element of color if you'd like. The element of color will create a focal point that might not have been there otherwise. But this is a good example of good composition and good shading and good color work. This one, little frog. You're going to look at the eyes first. Nice shading, good composition for the remainder of it. And even this one, it's a Wendys Burger. I love this picture. You have one colored pickle. You definitely are looking at the remains of the burger. Good shading, beautiful blending, good composition with the background elements and the cast shadow. It fills the entire frame. Parts go off to the edges. This is a good composition, even if it is just a burger. Now the last one I want us to look at is an artwork by Vincent van Gogh. To practice his art, he actually painted the things around him. And this is his bedroom. What he has here is a collection of everyday objects that make an overall painting. The area of focus is definitely the bed, not only because of the size, but because of that bright red cover that draws your attention. But from here, your eye kind of follows a path up and over in a curve. So all of these details, the window in the back, the furniture, the chair down here, touching the edges, your eyes will follow the texture of the flooring and notice all the little pieces that actually go off the page. This is a successful composition. Would this make a good black and white shaded artwork? Probably not. But it does show you one more example of a good composition.